As my colleague mentioned, Sangamo is a clinical stage company, and therefore they aim to create most of their value through R&D, so research and development. Research and development in the pharmaceutical industry has three main characteristics. The first one is a high cost structure, due to all the research and testing and clinical trials that researchers have to go through. The second one is a low success rate. This is because all of these products or procedures that researchers are experimenting on are experimental, and therefore sometimes they're inconclusive or they're not successful. Other times, these products or procedures might even be successful, but they just don't make it to the market because they have to go through different phases and different trials and the commercialization of the product that sometimes they just don't make it to the end consumer. The third main characteristic is a long payback period. As I said, these products and procedures have to go through many different steps. So there's phase one, phase two, clinical trials, regulations, commercializations, and therefore the payback period is very long on these products. We thought it was very important to touch on these characteristics to better explain our next slide. So here is Sangamo's financial statements. As you can see, they're operating at a net loss. Usually, this is a very alarming thing. However, we notice that in this field, it's quite common for pharmaceutical companies to start operating at a loss and then start making a substantial revenue once their product or procedure is commercialized. However, we did notice a couple of red flags within Sangamo that we'd like to touch on today. The first one is that most of Sangamo's revenue, if not all of it, comes from research grants and licensing fees. We noticed that most of Sangamo's competitors have a second revenue stream that comes from the commercialization of medical products that already exist, and therefore the revenue that comes from this second line of business help the company absorb the high cost structure of the research and development of their new products. And this is something that Sangamo is lacking. The second red flag that we noticed was that Sangamo has been operating at a net loss for a while. They have been in the industry for a while, and on top of that, a few articles came out recently talking about their main projects that seems to be not as effective as they thought it would be, and therefore this is another alarming factor. So here again, in terms of revenue, these are the collaborations that Sangamo has. They're with Kite, Pfizer, and Biorative. Pfizer is a very large company. The other two are smaller, wholly owned subsidiaries of bigger groups. However, Sangamo cooperates with them and receives license fees from these companies through their license agreement. In terms of competition, Sangamo's really has competition. It could come from many different places. The first one is government agencies who do different types of research, academic institutions, as well as just other pharmaceutical and biotechnology companies. And my colleague is gonna touch on this one in terms of strategic group.